Hey guys, Toasty here. Back with another build for 322 for Path of Exile, Trials of the Ancestors. Didn't really play too much on this week's start. Just so many different things going on, lots of other good games out at the moment. But figured I'd share my build, kind of just what I had worked up here. Big disclaimer from the get-go, I don't recommend this build. I think you would have a much easier time with even just going Juggernaut, or a lot of the other excellent starters out there. It was pretty slow, I think, to start off, but still fun to get put together, kind of figure out, especially since Guardian was pretty new and not many people knew how the ascendancies were going to work. So take it with a grain of salt. If you're interested in it, by all means, take a crack at it. But hopefully, you know what you're doing as you try to give this a go. So this is my Frost Breath, Glacial Hammer, Trinity Trauma Guardian here. Pretty tanky, not too bad DPS once you invest some currency into it. Really just wanted to go Guardian because I want to give out the new Ascendancy a try. Again, I think Jug is almost better 100% of the time, possibly even Slayer. But I was playing in softcore and I was interested in pumping up those numbers, basically, with getting the free auras from Unwavering Crusade. So that's essentially the main reason what I want to try to work around is, if you don't know, you get a free level 27 Anger, Wrath, and Hatred from this node. You have pretty good uptime on it. That is why we have negative 104% mana, and that is just because this skill doesn't really seem to be working, so you have to, at least when it comes to POB, so you have to punch in these skills manually. So if we click this off, our mana is totally fine, but it does increase our damage by a fair bit. Granted, I think most of that comes from Hatred, and not so much Anger and Wrath. It looks like you get maybe 500k out of Wrath with this build, and then 1,000,000 or 720 out of Anger. So, it most of it comes from Hatred. You could just throw on Hatred in the Jug version, but it was still fun to play around. There's also a few other nice little tricks that we utilize with Guardian and the new Ascendancies. Radiant Crusade is incredible for leveling. This summons a pretty tall Giga Chad that just does a screen-wide, essentially, Righteous Fire. It's a lot of damage when you're working through the axe, and I think it basically carried my leveling experience. The other nice part about Sentinel of Radiance is that 20% of the damage from hits is taken from your Sentinel's life before you. So as we are playing the trauma, which you inflict damage to yourself as you hit things, this is just basically another layer of damage mitigation, which helps to kind of sustain higher stacks of trauma. So definitely a worthwhile node here. Very much appreciated as part of the build. We also have Bastion of Hope. If you've attacked recently, or if you've cast a spell recently, you get a free 25% chance to block attack and spell damage. The attack portion of this is very easy to take care of. Just as you're hitting with Glacial Hammer, it resets the duration of this. And the cast a spell is a little bit more cumbersome to deal with. However, we do this by casting Blood Rage, essentially. We have a few, three actually, different instant cast spells, which makes it a little difficult. But, with either high APM, just kind of some automation, you can essentially make it consistent to make sure that you have high uptime on the block spell chance. So by just making sure you press press Blood Rage every 4 seconds, you get a free 25% spell block, which is very nice. And finally, we have Time of Need here. By itself, not incredible. A lot of the 100% life regeneration or every 4 seconds goes to waste most of the time. So what we do with this build is utilize Calm's Spirit, which turns that life regeneration into rage. So if you check out the Minotaur build that I posted a few days ago, you end up getting very high uptime on Berserk. Whenever Time of Need activates over that 1 second, you basically get kicked back to 100% or 50 rage, essentially, which makes it very easy to sustain. And so the curses and elemental ailments is kind of a nice byproduct of this node, but it is fantastic for rage generation. So just keep in mind that I think on PoE Ninja, if you look at Glacial Hammer builds, you'll see a few self-chill variants of especially on Jug. This is not possible with Guardian because that every 4 second of ailment removal will get rid of the self-chill on you, and it just really makes it pretty clunky to play around. So that's it for the Ascendancy. Again, really just here for the big numbers, getting the free auras in here. If we go over to the skills, so again, the Hatred, Wrath, and Anger come from the Ascendancy, but aside from that, we're running Determination, Precision, Tempest Shield, and Herald Device as our auras. Determination, almost 100% needed just because you're hitting yourself with physical damage quite a bit. Precision helps to get that accuracy cap, and we are a crit-ish variance. I know we only have 27% crit, but that does help to both stats are beneficial. The Tempest Shield gives you an extra 25% chance to block spell damage for a total of 50%, essentially for free, between that and the Ascendancy node, and immunity to shock, which is very big, as if you get shocked, again, you're doing more damage to yourself than is ideal, and it makes it pretty difficult to sustain high stacks of trauma. So I would say essentially a required aura with Tempest Shield. And then Herald Device is just for the explosions. Basically, everybody loves Herald Device explosions. We all got the Celestial microtransactions, so it's pretty nice there. For Glacial Hammer, our 1/6 link, we're running it with Ruthless, Trinity, Trauma, Elemental Damage with Attacks, or WED, and Faster Attacks. Ruthless is pretty nice because it supports every third melee hit, and every third melee hit of Glacial Hammer freezes enemies as though dealing more damage. So you're essentially, if you're fighting a pretty tanky rare, that third hit you're going to be doing to enemies ends up being pretty significant. Since we're running Heat Shiver as well, it helps as just a nice combo there. Trinity, just for the elemental penetration, very useful there. Elemental damage with attacks, and faster attacks. So I definitely recommend faster attacks as you're starting out. You could run Hypothermia as well if it feels a little bit better, but I think faster attacks is just a nicer quality of life, and as you gear up and things die in one hit, it just feels much better overall. If you punch into POB, or you try to look at some of the other skill gems or support gems, you would see increased duration here up at the top. And if I actually put it in here in place of WED, so I think I'd go from 8.8 million to 11.2 million. This is really just linked to how long the trauma stacks last on you. Unfortunately, I think not really that relevant for this build with Guardian's tankiness. You're really getting up to, with my current gear, I would say about 30 stacks before it really becomes an issue. In the earlier build variant, I basically was getting to 20 or 25 before I had to stop attacking and letting some of those stacks drop off. So I think there's definitely some tech there with increased duration that would be much easier to do on Juggernaut, or someone much smarter than me can figure out with Guardian. But just keep that in mind as you're trying to look through the supported or the most beneficial gems, essentially. Aside from that, we just have some Vengeance and Rage tech. So basically just whenever you're hitting yourself, you're doing a little bit of extra damage. Not really that impactful overall, but you essentially have free sockets, or at least I did with my build. Couldn't really figure too much else out to do with it. Berserk, which is huge. You get damage reduction, more movement speed, more attack speed. Feels very nice overall. Our cast when damage taken setup, which is linked to elemental weakness for lower elemental resistances on enemies and molten shell. Very easy to just go with the level 20 variant of this, as you're hitting yourself quite a lot, which makes it easy to trigger very often. Shield charge for movement, and then of course, unfortunately, playing melee, so we have to play totems with it as well. So it is a very button intensive build. I think I was utilizing basically 5 or 6 different keybinds pretty frequently across this build, because you need to recast your totems, your Sentinel of Radiance, shield charge, Glacial Hammer, and pressing Blood Rage every 4 seconds. So again, very APM high build, but that's just what I had to work with, essentially. For items, here is what we have equipped in kind of the expensive version. I would say I put maybe 10-15 divs into this so far. It is definitely once you invest some currency into it, the DPS starts to go up by quite a bit, but it's possible with a much lower investment as well, just a lot less damage with it. So we have Frost Breath, which is 100% what you should be going with, mainly because it does double damage to chilled enemies with this weapon. The biggest detractor from this weapon is just its very slow attack speed, and so you'll find as we review the jewels later on that attack speed is pretty common amongst all of them. Is very beneficial for the DPS of this build to just try to get that. I think it was baseline of down to 3.3 attacks per second, and now we've gone up to 6.9, so very helpful there. Dawnbreaker is great for reducing a lot of the physical damage that you take. Ideally, you could get some max fire resistance in as part of this build too. I just didn't really have the chance to level a few more levels to get to the very easy max fire resistance here, and so that would have increased my physical EHP by quite a bit. So if you have some free points, definitely check those out. Heat Shiver, just for the massive cold damage is extra fire damage per chill effect. You'll almost never freeze bosses, which is unfortunate, but just very nice overall for a lot of extra damage. Incandescent Heart, this is because we run Divine Shield on this build, and so Dawnbreaker just doesn't have any ES on it, essentially, and so I wanted to try to get to around 500 to 600 energy shield to keep up a lot of the damage that is reduced, and then given back to you as energy shield here. So I think a very fantastic node. This helps quite a bit, especially with the cheaper version of this build, to try to sustain some of those earlier hits. This also gives you elemental damage as extra chaos damage, which is fantastic. Just again, you need to also make sure that you're chaos capped with this, which is a little bit expensive to do sometimes. Calm's Spirit, which, as mentioned, because of time of need, gives you that very high uptime on Berserk. Fantastic gloves. Just some rare boots with some res on it, life, and chaos resistance because of the Incandescent Heart. Yoke of Suffering, which gives you increased damage taken for each element afflicted on the enemy. And so we do inflict Scorch because of Dawnbreaker, Shock, and Chill, of course, with our build. So, just a measly 15% increased damage taken, but that does help and also balances out quite a lot of the resistances as well, since we only have those 3 rare slots to work with to balance it out as needed. A ring with resistances, max life, elemental damage with attack skills, and the negative mana cost to non-channeling skills. This is essentially required, having that craft on it, since as you can see, I think we only, if I unequip my auras here, we only have 46 unreserved mana, and so Sentinel of Radiance I think alone costs somewhere around 38, and Glacial Hammer without the ring costs about, let's see, so 5, so 12 mana. So it really helps to balance out quite a lot of the mana cost there. Highly recommend it. And then finally, for rings, the Taming, which again is just a fantastic elemental damage attack ring. So pretty cheap and increases your DPS by quite a bit. We got a Stygian, again, just chaos, max life, elemental damage, and with a Murderous Eye Jewel in it, which gives flat damage to attacks. Very big because Frost Breath doubles damage on to chilled enemies. So added flat damage is very big, essentially for every jewel that you can get where possible. And again, of course, the attack speed and max life on it as well. Just some magic flasks and a Taste of Fate if you can't afford it. I think they were about 150 C perhaps when I bought it. Just a nice little DPS increase from 8.8 to 9.3 million, so about 500k, not too bad. And then again, jewels. So we'll go into the tree here in a bit. But a lot of them, again, have the flat damage. This has flat damage, accuracy, and max life, which I think was needed to get me to hit cap. The attack speed and the global crit modifiers. And I think that is it for the other jewels as well. I have dex on this one as I was short on my tree, and some extra accuracy as well. So for the tree, this is what we have. Leveling out, I mean, you can try to spec over to these minion damage and attack speed nodes early on before you make your way all the way over to here, if that helps. But otherwise, grabbing Divine Judgment is very nice. Galvanic Hammer, which is elemental damage with maces. Pain Forger, which is not as urgent to get in the early game. However, you will get eventually power charges when you're mapping, which is nice. And again, Sovereignty, which is very helpful as well. So don't forget to pick up Divine Shield on your way down here, which gives you ES for the physical damage prevented. And then we have some crit nodes, jewels, Juggernaut, Inexorable, which is essentially required. It gives you endurance charges when you are hit, and you are hit very often because you're hitting yourself. This gets you to that 90% physical damage reduction very easily. Call to Arms, which helps for your Ancestral Cry cast, very useful. And then with my version, or at least the expensive version, I have a melee hits have 10% chance to fortify on my Frost Breath. I think this was about 50C to get this crafted. Otherwise, the fortification helps a lot with the damage reduction against the trauma stacks. So if you don't have that on your Frost Breath, I would highly recommend getting this plus the Mastery of melee hits fortify, -3 to maximum fortification. So this is unfortunately 5 points, which you could put elsewhere, but once I got fortify on my Frost Breath, I was able to move that over to a cluster. And then Tribal Fury, just to help the clear a little bit. Champion of the Cause. If you need some extra reservation efficiency, make sure you grab this node here. And then I think that is it. Stun cannot be stunned here with Unwavering Stance. Berserking. I have monsters can't block your attacks just because I do a lot of Expedition. And then going up to grab this life here as well. If you don't have Incandescent Heart, which gives you attack damage leached as life, plus a cluster for Fuel the Fight, which gives you attack damage leached as mana, you really want to make sure that you come down here and grab the life and mana leech node here. Unfortunately, attack damage leached as life or mana is very rare on the tree. There's a few other spots of physical attack damage, but we don't do any physical attack damage. It's all elemental. So this is a very important node here. Early on, you can also, if you don't have the accuracy, go over to Precise Techniques. Grab that. Just make sure that your accuracy is higher than your maximum life. Or if you are still on your way over, you could get Resolute Technique as well while you're still working on your accuracy just a little bit. Fangs of Frost is also a nice pickup early on, and you can grab the, which node is it? 10% chance to inflict cold exposure. That is very nice as well, again, very early on. But once I got the cluster and Incandescent Heart set up, your Leech is essentially figured out through the chest and Fuel the Fight. I also have Martial Prowess for tank damage, attack speed, and accuracy rating, and Calamitous for that elemental damage with attack skills. And then just putting in some Murderous Eyes in there as well. So that does it for the tree. I don't think there's really too much else to call out here. You can pick up Barbarism if you want, and you have the points for it, max life and fire resistance. Very nice. There are some mace nodes here as well if you're interested in picking those up. But that essentially does it. We also have the early version of the tree. Back when my DPS was much worse, I only had maybe a div or two invested into this build. The tree looks essentially very much the same, but this is just what I was mentioning. You don't have Incandescent Heart or the cluster set up yet, so you have to path your way over to here. I had just a life on block shield here with Glancing Blows. That helped out quite a bit. Some rare armor, and but otherwise I think a lot of the other gear is the same. So just some quick questions. Again, the damage reduction for trauma. Divine Shield, again, plays a big part here. You won't be immune to damage entirely. Eventually the trauma stacks will just start to do too much damage from what the physical damage reduction can generate. So be mindful of that. Making sure that you have the attack damage as Leech, Dawnbreaker for taking physical damage as Fire, and then finally you get a lot of damage reduction between Berserk, which is, where is it? 19% less damage taken. Sentinel of Radiance, which is 20% of damage. It goes to the Sentinel's life before you, and then again Fortification as well. So works out to, I think here it's and this says 65% essentially taken, but this doesn't look like it's taken into account the Sentinel of Radiance less damage taken as well. So fairly tanky when it comes to the Physmax hit. This is against Guardian and Pinnacle bosses, have 165k EHP and 8.8 million. If we turn this on to just regular mapping, we got upwards of 293k and 11 million DPS. And again, when you're mapping as well, you'll have frenzy charges because you've killed, and you'll have power charges because you're stunning. So you kind of go upwards of 14.4 million there. But against bosses, a little bit harder to come by. You will at least have endurance charges. You'll be fortified, and you'll have attacked and cast a spell recently. So pretty trying to be at least a little fair when it comes to this tree. The biggest upgrades, again, making sure that you try to get the jewels if you can afford them. I think I only spent 40 or 50 chaos on most of these, and they were big benefits to at least the POB DPS. Not so much in terms of the feel, but just getting to 30 trauma stacks quicker was pretty nice. So keep that in mind. You can use POB's trade for these items to find out which gems or jewels work best in any given slot. And then finally, I just forgot to mention as well, I have the Panopticon anointed on my necklace. This is just really beneficial for single target DPS. When you're just getting started out, you could go with Ash, Frost, and Storm, which is much cheaper to anoint. A little bit more consistent in terms of the mapping experience, at least, since Panopticon is only relevant when you drop your totems. But if you can afford the 2 golden oils, which at least when I bought them were about 130C, it does help the single target DPS just a little bit. So that does it for the build. Again, a little bit tricky to figure out. It needs to use some tattoos, I think, to balance out attributes mainly, or attributes, and the chaos resistance for Incandescent Heart. But otherwise, I don't think any other tattoos that were really pivotal to the build, was just kind of really playing around with it a little bit. But yeah, otherwise, it was fun to figure out. Give it a try if you're feeling a little daring. And that's it. Have a great rest of your day. Let me know if you have any questions down in the comments below, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.